I mean, I think honestly, you've made me feel a lot better about this whole situation because everything I was hearing was you
Yeah.
need to your dog.
What's up, guys? This is Seamus on the Streets. Today we are going to see what's going on with the dogs, small edition. Hey, Eloise, how does it feel to be the most beautiful corgi in the world? Oh, Watson, welcome. Perfect timing. Same question to you, but the most handsome man. How does it feel to be the most handsome corgi in the world? I mean, I do agree. Do you guys think that this could ever be a thing? Oh, wow. Okay. All right. That's good. Good question. Come here. Is this the new Supreme or Gucci? What are you repping right now? Can you explain? Can you give us a nice little 360? Just go all the way around. No, I didn't mean walk all the way around. Just Snoop, come here. Just give us a quick twirl, will ya? Okay, fair enough. Puppy, so I see. Come here. We gotta show the camera here. Puppy, I see you got some of this nice bling going in here. You see this? How much does one of those cost you nowadays? How much are they running you? Oh, okay. You just too many people around. Well, if you could like hook me up with one of those, I don't know what size I am, but if you got some people, just let me know, all right? All right, sounds good. Yoda, I've heard from others. I'm not coming from me, It's just don't beat up the messenger. But you have small man syndrome. How do you respond to that? Do you feel like you're being personally attacked? Do you feel like maybe you do have small man syndrome? Okay, fair enough. Well, I don't think you do. I think you're just as big as you think, but just remember there are bigger dogs out there. My perfect little sweet pea, Penny. How are you doing today? Do you feel like you've made a lot of friends since you've been here? Penny, who do you think, I mean, I know they're all around, so you can whisper it in my ear if you want to, but who do you think your best friend is here? Me? You think I'm your best friend? Oh, I would agree with that. What does it feel like to be kind of like the sheriff of the small dog group? Do you feel like you've like taken on that role pretty seriously? Do you feel bad that you only get paid in treats? Okay, well that's fair. I think you're doing a great job, Don't let anyone tell you differently. Just keep up the good work, all right? Hey guys, is it cool if I guys ask you a quick question? Okay, all right. Sorry. All right, Danny, the most important question. How does it feel to be kind of disguised in the small group, all right? I know obviously you're big, but you've somehow been able to disguise yourself as one of the small ones. How do you feel about that? You're just way too excited about it, aren't you? Okay, well, you keep up the good work. Up. Yes. Up. Yes. Sit. Good. Great. Good. Come. Good. Okay. We're up. Yes. Come on. We're up. Yes. Okay. Good. Good. Good.
because you're shifting your expectation from one criteria to two criterias, right? So meaning early on in the teaching stages of commands, we work one singular command at a time, right? So let's say bed, right? We're going to do a bunch of beds, bunch of beds, bunch of beds, right? And we're going to release them with okay in between every single one of them, because I don't care what they do in between repetitions. The only thing I care is that they do bed good, right? And by keeping the criteria literally only get on the bed when I ask you to get on, zero expectation of anything else, zero expectation of waiting for when I tell you bed, zero expectation of you needing to come off of the bed quickly or anything like that. Simply getting onto the bed, we're kind of tapping into the dog's autopilot state of mind a little bit, which helps them really solidify each behavior and get confident in doing it, because they can't mess up as long as they go to bed when I ask them to get onto bed, right? Once we do that with all of our initial commands, so bed stays, down stays, come commands, leash walking, all of that, then you start piecing it together, which adds a lot of complexity into things, because even though they're commands that individually the dog can perform really well, now there's multiple criteria. Not only do you need to perform this command when I ask you to, but when you're in that command, you also need to be aware enough to perform another command that I may ask you to do, right? So yeah, a lot of times we'll see the dogs do really well with the individual commands, but then when you go to piece it together, it's like they never heard the commands before in their life, and it totally throws them off for that reason exactly.
When you have a dog on a bed,
Yep.
and then you go to the bed to release them, versus when you're releasing them from a different spot in the room.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so neither is wrong, right? I will say, like, so early on in my dog training career, or more specifically, not even my dog training career, but when I started having other trainers working here, I made a lot of, like, absolute rules, meaning, like, we don't release dogs from a far out of down stays, or we don't release them out of a far out of bed stays, meaning I would be over here and I would say, I would say okay, something like that. And the reason for that is because not that it's wrong to do it by any means, but the more you do those types of things, the more there's like an equal opposite conflict that could arise, right? So if I get into a habit of only doing come commands from afar out of a bed, then I'm going to constantly start turning these dogs from being really rock solid stable on the bed to laser focused on me anytime I'm away from them, at the edge of their seat, ready to jump up and come running over to me because they think that I'm going to ask them to do that thing, right? I've loosened up on that quite a bit. You could do come commands out of beds because it's a good training exercise to work on. You could do recalls out of downstays while you're out at the park, stuff like that. But I try to make sure people are at least mindful of, if you do it too much, this can happen. No different than I tell people, right? So long term with your dog, 6 years down the road post-training, right? You're always going to be flip-flopping between your dog either being really stable in their positions or really, really jumpy and fast moving with recalls and send away drills and things like that. And you're forever going to be playing this game where the needle is going to go from dead center, which is we're pretty equally good with both, to a little bit better with this one, a little bit better with this one, a little bit better with a little bit this one, right? And as you notice, they're starting to get a little too stable with the positions, the down stays, the bed stays, and a little not jumpy enough with the come commands. I start working more come commands and less bed stays and less down stays. And if I start noticing they're getting too jumpy out of position, I flip-flop it and I do more duration work and less fast energy, super quick come commands and stuff like that.
When you're going into the circle and you go from the bed to here just to go into a down to the bed, is there a reason why from the bed to the down you're not in a heel position?
You could, right? So realistically, again, it's not wrong. I could go come, right? And the expectation would be that he should heel with me to the spot we're going to, and then Sunny down. Very good. So I could do that, and then I could also go Sunny come, Sunny come, and get him to follow me back, bed. Good. To the bed command, right? So I could do that realistically. It's not incorrect to do it by any means. And if I'm working with a dog that's really fast and really jacked up, sometimes that process of like really calmly taking them from like here to nice casual walk, to here and then into that down, and then a real nice controlled casual walk back to the bed. Sometimes that can be very beneficial for a dog's state of mind. Somebody that talks about that a lot is Sean O'Shea with the Good Dog. You know, a lot of, you know, I would say honestly, he's one of the guys that really pioneered a lot of this like bed down, bed down, bed down stuff. And more so he calls it like working in tight spaces. Like he did it a lot through like a tiny apartment he started training dogs in. But he talks a lot about that because the slow stuff is really challenging for the really jacked up aroused dogs, right? But sometimes that act of, Sonny, come. Sonny, come. That act of them running all the way over to me from afar, down. Good. So sometimes that act of, if they are really motivated, of letting them come like barreling at you and then down and getting them to turn that off and immediately focus in and disengage into a stationary position can also be equally beneficial for their state of mind. So all of these things, it's not that doing this is the only way and the right way and doing this is the wrong way or anything like that. You just have to constantly be balancing out how you're working with the dog depending on what your goal is with that individual dog. So Sonny right now, he performs his commands, but you can tell he's very kind of slow and like Eeyore-like with it and stuff like that. So because of that, I'm not going to focus on trying to slow him down a whole lot because I want to see his motivation pick up and I want to see him get more eager and run and have fun with it and stuff like that. Where a dog like Vinny, maybe sometimes I'm going to work a lot more on that real slow pace stuff. Do you have another one?
I have another one.
Ask away.
When you guys are doing this, it's usually in a shape form, like whether it's a square room,
That's just the way it
or
works
you're
out.
doing it in like a circle.
Yeah.
If you were to do it like in any other way, do you think it would be like...
Be fine. Here's the reason why we don't, right? Getting into working in small spaces. This room is, what, 20 by 20 or something like that? It's not very big. So any other pattern I could realistically work this in would put me in a position where I'm too close to a bed when I'm asking it down, or I'm too close to, or I'm too far away from a bed when I'm asking for a bed command or something like that, right? Where it would just create confusion. So it works out in a space like this where the corners give me enough space to get the dog off of the bed, out of proximity of the bed where I avoid some of that confusion, and then into a down, and then vice versa back to the bed.
Like, okay.
So we're gonna do the same thing as normal. I don't want him sniffing or anything like that. The only difference is even without seeing the dogs, I wanna start adding in some more reward for correct behavior on the walk. So as you're walking with him in motion, if you get a stretch of whatever, 3, 4, 5 seconds where he's doing a pretty good job, he's not pulling, he's in position nicely, go ahead and mark with good and just reward like in motion like while you're doing so. That walk looked pretty good. Obviously the rewards seem to shift the attention pretty well to you, so we're gonna start adding some more of that into it. Obviously I don't want you to have to use 9 gazillion rewards every time you take him, but excuse me, since we were being a little extra hard on him over some of the sniffing and stuff, I wanna start to counteract that a little bit, right, when he's doing correctly, and really start to show him like, hey, like this is good, right? As long as you're doing that, obviously all is good. So that looked good. So let's do this. We're gonna take him inside real quick, give him a quick break, and then we'll take him to the backyard, and I want to look at some of that kind of stuff out there with him. Obviously, you guys know this, you know, with a dog like, I mean, you see all that energy kind of coming out of him. Yeah, this is why I kind of want to look into if we could at least start getting him to a place where we could have him off leash in the yard or something. Really giving him an ability to just like burn off some energy is going to be so productive for his state of mind, you know? Did you say, is he pretty into like playing like frisbee or ball or?
Frisbee, ball.
Awesome.
Literally is his favorite thing.
Good, good. Yeah, we'll take him out there in a minute here and we'll take a look at some of that stuff and see if we can get him a little bit more reliable off of the leash back there. Okay, so all I'm gonna do right now is as he's out here, if he crosses the driveway into the yard, we're gonna mark with no and give a correction for it. And we'll start with pretty low corrections as we're setting the initial boundary, and those will gradually increase if he continues to kind of fight it, so. Lost in the snow. It's nose work, man. There you go, you got it. That's a pretty giant snowball you made there.
It's even bigger the other day. I guess at least weighs 10, maybe 20. Of what unit? I don't know.
I was gonna say, yeah, 10 or 20 of what? Is he bad about dropping the ball for you too?
Depends on how
It depends. If he has an audience,
Ah.
not great. But if
Okay.
we're doing one-on-one, he will like fly back to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it depends on his mood.
Well, so let's make sure we're being, you know, little details like that are very important, especially when the dog's in like a high state of drive. So let's make sure if we're gonna give the drop command, we're in a position to back it up. So if he doesn't do it, tell him no for it. And same deal, we'll give a little correction for that. Nothing crazy, but enough to make sure that he's releasing it for us. Lincoln, drop. No. No. Drop. No. Down. So this is where the drop starts becoming really important, right? Because he really likes the game, but you can tell he's very defensive over his ball. And it's not a problem because most of the time, right, we're not really fighting him over it. It's kind of like, all right, you could have it for a second until you want to drop it. But without that control behind it, you could start to run into a lot of issues with that kind of guarding stuff over particular resources, right? Okay. And then the key is, like, when you get dogs that are defensive over it, a lot of times it's because they think it's going to go away. You know, they find you some sort of threat, right? So we just want to make sure he realizes that's not the case. And then the other key with it is a lot of people will focus on the initial release of the ball, but then not the impulsiveness to get it back right after, right? So one thing, like if I'm playing with my dogs who are very, especially Vinny the Malinois, very, very ball motivated, for a lot of dogs, they'll release it quickly, but then when you go to pick it up, it's like they try to snatch it real fast before you could grab it. And we want to address that side of things as well, right? So let's practice this a couple times. Why don't you can go ahead and give it to him here.
Okay.
And then you could let him have it for a minute, and then whenever you want him to release it, what we're gonna do is we're gonna give that drop command. If he doesn't do it, we're gonna correct for it, and then as you're going to get it, be slow about it to give him almost that opportunity to try to snatch it before you get it, and if he goes for it again, we're gonna tell him no for that.
Got it.
And right now, even though it's not in his mouth, we haven't told him drop yet, so if he grabs it like he did right there, it's totally fine. There we go.
No. It's laying on it like an egg.
That's all right, see if you can grab it.
No.
There we go. And then as soon as you get it, give it right back to him.
Good.
And you can like throw it for him to get him to re-engage, obviously. And obviously, since we told him, okay, if he grabs it now, that's fine. So go ahead and grab it and like throw it for him.
Drop.
There we go.
Good. Okay.
There we go. Perfect. Then we're going to try that whole sequence again here in a minute.
Drop.
And then if he doesn't do it, you're going to tell him no.
Drop.
There we go. Perfect. And then give it right back. That's the most important part, is once we get him to release it and we see he's not grabbing it, give it right back, right? It's the reinforcement. As the game starts again, the quicker you give this to me. He's trying to figure out what the new game is right now, is what's going on, which is very normal. But again, this is actually good to see, because this impulsiveness over the ball and some of that defensiveness over not wanting to relinquish it to you, well, we've talked about this before, all this stuff correlates, right? And it's gaining control over something he's perceiving as a threat or a high value resource. Now, additionally, try to make sure you have a clear release for him to go grab it again, right? So instead of good, we would use like okay or something like that. Essentially releasing him from the drop command, right? Nice. Now go ahead and tell him drop it.
Drop it.
And then go ahead and grab it. And then whenever you want him to have it, nice clear release, then throw it.
Okay.
Perfect. So just like any other command, even though it wasn't in his mouth, until we gave him that command, technically he would be free to grab it again. And still try to avoid that little bit of like snatching it, right? We want to really make sure he's practicing good impulse control and not grabbing that thing. So even as you grab it, as you're pulling it away, we don't even want him going back to try to grab it out of your hand.
Drop it.
Perfect.
Good.
Now that was the best one so far, and the reason for that is he didn't try to inch closer to it after you gave that command. So he's starting to show a little bit better self-control for it. Now give that back much more quickly though to him, right? Let's maybe try and get one or two more, since he's kind of getting in a groove now.
Drop it.
Excellent. Excellent. There we go, and then right back to him. Perfect. And you can tell he knows what that release is, so as soon as he heard it, he knew that throw was coming. Looks great. Let's do a few more.
Drop it.
Perfect.
Okay.
Awesome. And you kind of want to get into a groove like that, where like when I'm playing with my dogs, usually I do it with a chuck it. It's like I throw it, they come back immediately, drop, pick it up, throw it, they bring it back, drop, pick it up, throw it, you know? And I'll kind of let the momentum of the game go.
Okay.
Awesome. Two more, and then we'll take them back inside.
Drop it.
Nice.
Good. Okay.
Awesome. Yeah, that was good to see, because that's going to be a big thing to start working on with him. We've definitely got to get a little more control, especially seeing some of that guarding that he was kind of doing it with me. We definitely want to make sure he's not in that possessive state of mind. Yeah, I don't see any reason why you couldn't start letting him out off leash back here when you're supervising him.
Yeah.
Just be ready on your e-collar. The second he steps off of that driveway, we would be given a correction for that. Two things to work on here. So one, in your walks through the neighborhood, I want you to start adding a lot more reward into it, even without distractions present, right? So really reinforce that attention on you even further, right? Second thing I'd really like to see you focus on is the toy time in the yard, right? A lot more structure to that. We need to see that impulsiveness over the ball get way better, because he was definitely pretty bad about that at the beginning. So, and then, you know, like I said, get into that rhythm like you did at the end. It was looking really, really good at the end there. So, so work those couple things for now. That'll get you a little bit further along, and then meet up again in a couple weeks.
They got in 2 fights so the first fight was January 6th. The second fight was January 12th. So they got in 2 fights about a week apart, but it's been
You're talking this month?
Yes.
Okay.
The first one was they were both outside. Gimli was trying to find something under the shed, and then Lego wanted him to play, or at least that's the thing. And I think Gimli wanted Gimli thought that Lego wanted whatever was under the shed, because whenever like Gimli is outside, he's very focused on whatever's under the shed. Lego could care less. So we think there's some resource guarding there. The second fight happened about a week later. I had left the pantry door open with the dog food. Lego got into it. I started yelling at them to stop, and then Gimli went after Lego because of the.
Well, so you've had these dogs for a year and a half, right? And you said both of these fights you had were in the last month. So you had, almost a month and a half of no problems with them, obviously. So
Right.
So there was no issue amongst them up until just recently, or was there any sort of like little problems or anything?
So about, I want to say in like February or March of last year, they I had started feeding them together, and Lego would go to Gimli's bowl first and then to his own.
Yep.
So Gimli got angry and went after Lego, but then after that I started feeding them separately.
Okay.
And we haven't had.
So it's always been centered around like resources and stuff like that. Okay.
Yes.
And are they both like fairly food motivated dogs? Like when you go to feed them, do they get real hyped up and stuff? Or okay.
I mean, I would argue that Lego's a lot more food motivated than Gimli, but Gimli is definitely like motivated by food.
Yep. Okay. Gotcha.
And I would also think like, given like how his life started, he's also probably like pretty protective of his food.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it definitely can contribute to it. Long term, it's not going to create any sort of it's something we should be able to get past, but
Right.
it could have their home base starting obviously a little bit lower than normal, obviously. So, okay. So a lot of times when we're dealing with dogs that are getting into fights with each other, particularly when we have like a long period of time where there's no problems, and then like suddenly it like kind of comes out of nowhere, and then it like compounds on itself and like, progressively gets worse really rapidly. It's usually a buildup of a lot of little things that we've missed that have essentially put the dogs in this position like over and over again, where it's like, I'm a little agitated with you, or I'm a little overstimulated, or whatever it may be. And when it doesn't go unchecked enough times, eventually one of the dogs hits a point where they're like, fine, like I'm just going to discipline you myself, essentially, right? We say fights are usually a rise of one dog disciplining another dog for something that we should ultimately be doing, right?
Sure.
So my first question when I look at all of this is, what are both of their behavior like in the house outside of the fighting with each other? Meaning like, what sort of like, let's call them nuisance behaviors, unwanted behaviors, anything like that would they individually display?
Well, Lego is a jumper.
Okay.
He'll like go into the kitchen, jump up on the counter.
So surfing. Does he do it on people too? Is he a jumper on people?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's calmed down from like the way it was before. And again, it's still something like we're working on, because Joe is really into board games. So we have people coming over frequently. Sure. So we try to make sure that we have those greetings as calmly as we can.
Yep.
But it's like once he's able to get that energy out, he's like calm.
Yep. Which is normal. I mean, at some point the energy wears off and it's not exciting anymore and stuff, but usually it's that spike of arousal in the first place is really, what we want to look to even out a little bit. Right. So, okay. So outside of, go ahead.
In terms of inner dog behavior, Lego definitely annoys Gimli. He steals Gimli's toys. He'll mount Gimli. Gimli mounts Lego sometimes, but not as much. And we definitely try to stop it when it happens, but we're not getting it all the time. Lego also has pretty bad separation anxiety from Jess, not as much from me, but
how does that display itself?
If Jess is in the other room and I'm in, because especially now because we've kept them separated,
Sure.
he will just try to knock down the door to get to Jess.
Okay.
If he is in the other room and he can hear Jess, he will yowl and bark. Like if he's in the crate, he just he also doesn't like just being in the crate in the same room with us. Like if he's in the crate and we're in the same room, he's just constant. Well, when Jess is in the same room, I can be in the same room and he's more or less fine. But
it's what's weird about it is it's only like in the evening. Like I'll get them up, take them out, feed them, put them both in the crate, go like shower, get ready for work.
Yeah.
Nothing. He's like, I'll come back like before I go out the door, I'll give them each a treat and then I'll leave. Joe is still in bed and they're quiet.
Yep.
But it's like it's after we get home. But I would guess that like he's been in the crate all day. There's energy that's built up.
Yeah.
I
obviously, fresh in the morning, when the dogs are still a little sleepy and stuff is usually, it's obviously not quite as intense, typically speaking, So I'd say that's normal.
He's also very bad at letting Gimli have affection. So when Gimli is being pet, Lego is just there.
Affection stealing, yeah.
In terms of Gimli, there isn't so much aside from, well, obviously the food resource guarding, but he's honestly not even bad about toys much. Like Lego will steal toy. Lego actually is super protective about toys. Like he'll steal a toy and then Gimli will try to get back and Lego growl at him.
Yep.
Ridiculous. Gimli, not so much.
Yep.
He's actually pretty laid back. His things, so inner dog wise, not too much, but he very much he will eat things. Like he'll chew on things. So we're constantly finding, like he'll find like a tissue or something or we come in, we
all right. Well, just looking at this list of things, it a lot of your issues are very, very clear, right? So it seems like Lego is obviously, he's kind of the impulsive, kind of does what he wants to do kind of guy. And then Gimli, just based on some of the things you said, maybe a little anxious and stuff. And then obviously just, due to probably getting picked on a little bit by his brother, kind of hit a point where just like enough is enough, know? And that's pretty clear from like, even like you mentioned, like the food guarding with Gimli, right? And I know you said that was pretty early in when you got him and stuff, but like, let's say even a couple of times Lego was like trying to steal food from him, like when he was eating or whatever it may be. Like, that's where I look at like justifiable and unjustifiable, like display of aggression, like the resource guarding in that context of like, if another dog is actively trying to take food out of his bowl and he's defending that, that's a pretty normal thing that dogs will do. Right. And that gets back to, again, the root of a lot of this problem, which is we need to have better control over the dogs around resources to be able to prevent that stuff from happening. I would say we need to strive to be able to feed them with each other while being able to keep them from messing with each other. And the same goes with, you said, obviously, Lego steals toys, right? So toy stealing, even though it hasn't become a problem yet, is still another very big display of like dominance towards another dog. The affection stealing, right? Same deal, another display of guarding a resource, right? All those things. I would say if there's three things dogs are going to fight over, it's food, toys, and affection, right? So we need to be able to control those things effectively. And especially as you have more dogs, like I have 4 dogs myself, and we have to make sure, feeding time, again, I feed them all in the same area, but I'm there supervising, and the dogs all individually know, like if you leave your bowl and finish it and try to go towards another dog, you're going to get a correction for that. If you try to steal the toy from that dog over there that's chewing at it, you're going to get a correction for that. If I'm petting one of the dogs and another one comes in barreling in, trying to push him out of the way, they're going to get a correction for that. And because of that, we've set those boundaries and they don't do those things. And the highest value thing that's happening that could create competition, we've mitigated that risk, right? So that doesn't totally prevent a fight from happening. Like there's other things dogs can fight over, but it big time reduces the risk of it and gains a lot of leadership for us to be able to address other problems that dogs might fight over, which would be things like, the issue in the backyard. It could have been a resource thing. If he's constantly like under the deck, like trying to look for stuff. Yeah. Whether it's, he thought there was an animal under there or a toy under there or whatever it may be. Yeah. There's a very real possibility that That's some resource guarding there as well. But then we would look at things like that. Like that's more of like a perceived sense of a resource.
Right.
You know, we need to teach him, like, obviously, don't worry about what's going on under there, right? Or, you know, sometimes dogs will get really reactive towards things that are outside of the fence line.
Which is Gimli.
Is that him also? Yeah, that's another thing we want to put the kibosh on for sure, because the other thing dogs will fight over that it's not resource related is like periods, bursts of arousal and overstimulation is like a magnet to some dogs. So we'll see commonly fights happen where a situation I worked with recently was a dog that would go in the backyard, and if he saw a squirrel, would just go from like 0 to 100, right? And the other dog in the house started like wanting to go check that energy and like go run over and like grab him while he was doing it, which was turning into fights happening, right? So same deal. All of these boil down to one dog is correcting the other dog for things we should be correcting them for, right?
Right.
So the positive is all of this is very, very clear from the standpoint of as we start chipping away at some of these issues, we should be able to get a handle on this situation pretty quickly. We just need to isolate, one, how do we set ourselves up to actually start addressing some of these things? And two, how do we go about actually disciplining for them, right? So I know you mentioned, so you use kind of like what is it, like pennies in a jar kind of thing or something? Or?
Yeah, it's like I think it's like it's the same idea. So we had a trainer like last winter, and that was what he said to use.
Yeah. Now the trainer that came, what sorts of things did you hire that trainer for? And what did you kind of work on throughout the classes that you did?
We worked on basic obedience, like sit, come, leash walking.
Yep.
Which definitely was improved afterwards, especially Lego for the most part will obey most commands these days.
Yeah.
And how did you do that training? Was it like leash training? Was it just with treats? Like, how did you guys do it?
It was mostly with treats.
Okay.
So it was like the command was, it'd be like, okay, Lego, sit.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'd like walk away and be like, okay, Lego. Or no, you tell them to wait. And then like I'd walk away and say, okay, Lego, come.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sorry. He's like, why are you telling? I'm here.
Hamming out for the camera, yeah.
So like Lego is really, like we said, like is very food motivated. So like I've been hand feeding them this last week.
Mm-hmm.
And with Lego, like I have him sit and wait, and I'll like walk out of sight and he'll stay.
Yep.
Then I'll tell him to come and he'll come.
Mm-hmm.
So Gimli right now I was working more with like engaging because last weekend we had a trainer from our area come, and she came in and like Lego was going crazy in his crate. I had Gimli on the leash like in our dining room, and she was like watching me walk back and forth with him. And she was like, he's not engaging with you. Like he doesn't care.
Sure.
And then like after that, like she was, I mean, I want to say it was like within 5 or 10 minutes of her being there, she was like, your safest option is to rehome Lego. I would have hoped that would have not been the first thing that she said.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, if we can't get a handle on things and like, we have to rehome them, like we will, because we want what's best for them. But
no, that's, and this is the issue with a lot of different, and I don't know anything about any of these trainers, obviously, but this is the issue with a lot of this stuff is some people are just, they call them like one trick ponies or whatever, where it's like if the dog doesn't function exactly how they want them to, like they kind of look at them as like more of like a lost cause, where it's like let's look at engagement, for example, right? Obviously engagement is important. We need the dog to care about us, right? But engagement can be accomplished many ways. And a lot of people look at it only as like, does the dog want the treats you have? Will they focus on you? Stuff like that. Engagement can come from a dog just avoiding the consequences for misbehaving, right? Like my dogs can pay attention to me. Yeah, sometimes because they're getting rewarded for stuff, but also because they know if they lose focus of me and start going bananas and jumping all over my guests, they're going to get in trouble for that, right? So I look at all these problems. And again, when I break down like what you said, which is, all these issues that we described for Lego, for Gimli, which, there's not a ton of them by any means, but there's some very clear ones that need work on. And then we look at the fights that they had. And then we look at the fact that this is not a situation where like they hated each other right off the rip, or that they're super grudgy towards each other still right now or anything like that. This is a matter of you had a couple isolated incidents that could directly be correlated to the individual issues they have, which as soon as we solve those things, it's irrelevant. You know what I mean? Yeah. We could get past that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, from that standpoint, we could definitely help you out with that. So you're using the pennies in the jar. So how would you typically, let's say hypothetically, Lego is, jumping or counter surfing or displaying separation anxiety or something like that. How would you currently go about solving that? Or what would you do about it?
Well, the the counter surfing, I like look over at him because like we just recently redid our kitchen. Sure. So like the room we're in is our family room and kitchen. So like I can see the kitchen from the sofa. Sure. So like I see him jump up on the counter and I go, Lego, get down. Mm-hmm. And he'll do this like, oh, well, boyfriend's about to throw up.
The best dog noise in the world.
Yeah.
Well, at least he went in his crate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
hear it.
For the pennies or for the jumping up on people, it's usually down Lego and then shake the can.
Okay.
We actually have avoided using the can as much just because of the effect it has on Gimli.
Sure.
Yeah, the can is like our last resort.
Okay, I got you. So it's a lot of kind of verbal reprimand or something like that.
Yes, mostly.
Okay, gotcha. All right. Yeah, and that's the downside. Pennies in a jar, the can, or some people use like a pet corrector, which is like a can of compressed air and stuff. They could be very, very productive tools. Right. The issue with them is, when you're in multi-dog households, they kind of unintentionally correct everybody. Right. And especially if you have a dog that's already a little sensitive to noises, stuff like that. Obviously, we don't want to be further stressing him out with stuff by any means. So
right. I'm sure that like my anxiety has been really high, so I'm sure that's like.
Yeah, I mean, our energy is important to be aware of, right? We want to make sure that we're not panicking all the time over things and stuff like that. But it's not so much that the dogs are going to sense our anxiety like a lot of people will tell you. What I find is that it has more to do with when we're stressed out or we're anxious, we don't focus clearly through the situation and communicate effectively with the dog, right? We kind of go into panic brain and like do the things we need to do, like all jumbled or, out of order or something like that. Right. So the first thing we need to do is we need to figure out a more clear way of being able to discipline for some of these behaviors. Right. The problem is right now, just based on kind of what you just described to me, you're in a routine of multi-step process. You kind of interrupt first, right? Then verbal reprimand if they don't listen, and then give kind of a correction if they still don't listen then at that point. So essentially what's happening, because dogs don't really understand like a verbal correction, right? Just saying no to a dog, like they may like maybe, get a little sensitive to it or something like that because they don't like the energy being put at them. But it's very difficult for them to take that and attach it to a specific thing that they're doing, and then it be motivating enough for them to truly want to avoid it moving forward the next time, right? And if you look at a correction, if we're going to correct a dog for something, the intention of the correction is to attach it to a behavior and have that behavior just go away, right? I always say our goal is not that we tell the dog no and the dog listens to us when we say no. The goal should be that the dog just stops making those mistakes in the first place, right? So, the verbal corrections or the warnings and stuff like that, we've got to be able to just eliminate those altogether and just be able to correct when they do it, so we can get much more rapid results with some of this stuff and actually see those behaviors go away, right? Do you have any other ways of correcting the dogs? Like, meaning, do you have any sort of training tools? Have you guys ever used like e-collars or different training collars or anything like that?
So we have e-collars. I got one that has like the remote and it attaches to 2 collars. And there was one time where I was trying to shock Gimli and accidentally shocked Lego, and it was so bad.
Yeah. Been there.
Yeah. And then we have like a prong collar. We have a choke. The first trainer we ever went to recommended a choke collar, and I don't like choke collars. I'm fine with prong collars. I'm okay with e-collars. I just really did not like the prong collar. So no, sorry, I mean the choke collar.
Choke chain, yeah. Yeah, I mean, choke chains are not, I don't use them at all. I mean, they're kind of a dated tool, and I don't see any reason why you would use one over a prong collar anyways when you get to a training standpoint. So I'm with you on that. I mean, there's a lot of like kind of backed evidence that a choke chain is actually a little bit more dangerous of a tool to use than some of the others. So now the e-collars, you said you have e-collars. Do you know what kind of e-collar you have?
I could probably check it out. It was off of Amazon.
Off Amazon.
Yeah, I could probably go back and see what.
And do you still have it, I'm assuming?
Yes, we do. I just have to find it.
Okay. So did you use it much past? I know you said you accidentally corrected the one dog over the other. Did you use it that much for anything else?
Not really.
And what did you get it for initially? What were you going to try to use it for?
To correct, like with the counter surfing and the like when he was jumping, that kind of thing. I mean, is that what you would normally use it for?
Yeah, so I obviously we're big e-collar proponents, right? Now, depending on the type of e-collar, like there's certain ones that are better than others, but for the sake of just being able to get started with things, I'm sure whichever one you have is going to be fine. If we got into like a training, quote unquote, like use of it where we would be using it to teach different commands and stuff like that, you'd probably want to get a higher quality one. But if we're just using it for more of a corrective purpose and being able to discipline for certain behaviors, like it's going to get the job done and it'll be fine.
Okay.
Now, one thing is, as I'm looking at this list, because the majority of these issues really seem like they're kind of stemming from Lego more than anything, I would put most of your emphasis into him over the next week or so, right? Okay. Meaning you might not even need to put it on Gimli, right? We could just kind of let Gimli just chill for a little bit, right? And really focus on kind of getting Lego whipped into shape and get some of these unwanted behaviors curbed. And then we could see like if there's any remaining stuff that we need to address with Gimli from there. So yeah, the e-collar is going to be something you're going to want to start using right away. So definitely, get that thing out tonight, get it charged up and get it ready to go. And then starting tomorrow, you're going to start implementing it, right? So here's the couple things that I want you to do, right? So one, I want you to make sure that the collar is on him pretty much anytime you're out with him, right? So the key with correcting behaviors and creating inhibitions for things is we have to make sure that it's happening consistently, meaning every time he rehearses the behavior, we're in a position to correct for it. And sometimes people will only have the dog wear it for an hour or an hour and a half or something like that. And then the dog has it off for a majority of the day. And then they correct for it sometimes, but then miss it other times. And it's like this 50-50 thing where they're constantly kind of getting away with it, right? So by having it on pretty much all the time initially, you'll be able to start addressing for some of these things. And especially since there's 2 of you guys right now, usually what I recommend for everybody is split off where you kind of essentially have like a check-in, check-out system where it's like maybe you're on dog duty for the first 2 hours and then you're going to be busy, you're going to go take a shower, you're going to go do some work, you're going to whatever. And then you pass it off, right? Then you're on dog duty then for 2 hours or something like that, as opposed to what I see some people do, which is They'll have both people trying to be on top of things all the time, all day long, which just gets confusing because you either misplace the remote, don't know who has it, you think the other person was supposed to correct, and then you miss the opportunity for it or something like that, where we just have the responsibility totally in one hand for a little bit and then totally in the other hand for a little bit. And then whoever's responsibility it's on just needs to be supervising that dog in that moment, right? Now, as far as actually giving a correction, right, I'm just going to go through these couple of things that you've already kind of outlined as far as problematic behaviors and tell you exactly how I would address them, right? So jumping and counter surfing, right? So just jumping, right? Like if you have people coming over for a game night or something like that, obviously we would make sure the e-collar is on proactively before they get there. We would have it set at a level that you think is going to be motivating enough for that level of distractions. Obviously, higher distractions or higher arousal situations are going to require a higher level. Lower distractions, lower arousal situations, a little bit lower of a level. But with both, I would err on the side of a little higher than lower with things. Because the goal here, keep in mind, is that we want to create an inhibition, meaning we want this to just go away. We don't want to have to nag the dog every time they do it. And I don't want the correction just to be enough where it stops it in that moment. I want it to be enough where it's going to leave a little bit of a lasting impression for next time they think about doing it, right? So people coming over, collar's going to be on. Don't ask him to do anything, meaning don't try to get him to sit or anything like that. And when he goes over, if 4 paws go up and touch the person, we would mark with no and give a tap on the button, right? From there, we wouldn't tell him come, we wouldn't tell him down, we wouldn't say anything like that. We need to see that when we say no and tap that button, that he disengages on his own. If he doesn't, let's say we say no and tap the button and he still stays up there, or he stays up there and then just kind of like, all right, I guess I'll get down, right? And like slowly gets himself down or something. That means your level was a little bit too low. So you would increase it and you would try again, obviously. Another mistake I'll see people make, especially with jumping, is they'll proactively correct the dog before they make the mistake because they could tell the dog is about to make the mistake, meaning like you see him get ready to start hopping up and you tell him no for it. Don't do that because he's not going to know what it's for. You got to wait until he actually makes the mistake, right? Same exact concept with the counter surfing. So you look over, he's on the counter. We're going to tell him no. We're going to give a correction for that. Really straightforward, right? The counter surfing, if you're having a hard time catching it, because for some people it like happens so randomly, we don't really know. You don't really know exactly when it's going to happen. If you find that's the case, you can kind of set the situation up and like whatever, have a plate of food on the counter or something that's going to entice him a little bit, right? And then if he makes the mistake, you could just be ready to correct for it then. Stealing toys, right? And we're going to talk about putting them back together in a minute here, obviously. But when we do put them back together, stealing toys is very similar. We're still going to be giving a correction for it. But the key is you have to set a perimeter that's much bigger that we need him to stay with that or outside of, right? So let's say Gimli has a toy, right? And, you know, Legolas is good, wants to go over and take it from him, right? I'm going to set a perimeter of maybe 5 feet around Gimli, where if I see him get within that perimeter, I'm going to give the correction before he gets all the way to it, right? Okay. Because the intent is already there, right? He's already going to take that toy. He's already engaged in the behavior. We're just stopping it before it hits a point where Gimli is like looking at you like, you going to do something about this, right? We need for him to start building that trust in handler again of seeing us address the problem before it hits like this over threshold point for him. Right? Mounting. I know you mentioned the mounting thing. Is that something he does like all the time or just sometimes or?
It's when they get really excited, Lego will mount Gimli and vice versa. But Gimli tends to do it less because Gimli's excitement level is a little bit lower than Lego's.
Yeah, for sure. The mounting, I don't, depending on the context of it, that one I don't necessarily address as much. I'll tell you that mounting is much more normal in dog than you think, right? And there's plenty of dogs that as they're playing with each other will kind of go back and forth, like mounting each other and stuff if they're excited. So that one, unless you could tell Gimli's getting like really agitated by it, I probably wouldn't worry so much about. You know, that one could just be normal communication amongst them. Affection stealing is very similar to the toy stealing, right? Or the food stealing or anything like that. We're proactively setting that boundary where when he tries to butt himself over when you're petting one of them, we would give that correction before he already steals the resource, being us, right? And then the separation anxiety one, right? So that's something that obviously you want to get under control as well. And there's two sides to that equation. So obviously there is some correction that goes into it, but there's also the side of making sure we're not doing anything to cater to it, right? So obviously just kind of seeing from, you know, the interaction and stuff you guys have with him here right now, I could tell he's a little bit kind of demandy over attention. Is that normal?
100%, yeah.
Okay. Which is normal. I mean, listen, like a lot of dogs are like that. And I don't mind, you know, giving attention or cuddling on the couch or anything like that.
Yeah.
You do want to make sure that he's not totally in control of it, right? Meaning start being mindful over the next 5 days, 6 days, 7 days of your interactions with him and start asking yourself the question, how much of this interaction is because he's soliciting it versus I'm soliciting it? Right. And a lot of times what I find with people is when they take a step back and just before you pet the dog, just ask yourself that question. 9 out of 10 times when we're interacting with our dog, it's because our dog initiated the affection, meaning that's like the equivalent of your dog giving you commands all day. Right. He comes over and he says, hey, pet me. And you say, okay. Right. And then he comes over later. Hey, cuddle on the couch with me. Okay. All right. So be aware of that because again, it's not that I have an issue with the attention giving, but if our dog is constantly in control of it, that really starts to shift that dynamic of them seeing us as their resource of the fun and the love and the attention whenever they want it. Right. So it makes it much more difficult to regain some of the leadership we need to gain with them because 50% of the day, 60% of the day, 70% of the day, they're kind of bossing us around more or less. Right. So be mindful of that, right? Additionally, if there's a period of separation ever, right? Let's say you're in another room with Lego and you're in the kitchen cooking something or whatever, right? And Lego's getting all worked up. Obviously, we want to correct for that, and I'll talk about that in a second. But let's say whenever you go back to be with Lego, make sure the first thing you do is not give the dog attention. Right. Because that's something commonly we'll see is the dog will finally take that barrier away, open that door, let the dog out of the crate, whatever it may be. And as soon as the dog comes out, we're like, hey, it's okay. I'm back. Right. And we're like, we're kind of catering to that state of mind a little bit. Right. So you got to be really, really mindful of that.
Well,
and is he barking at anything in particular there?
he probably either heard or saw something outside or heard the neighbors.
Okay, gotcha.
His crate is right next to our sliding glass door.
Gotcha. So as far as correcting for the separation anxiety.
Oh,
there's children outside. So.
Oh yeah, our neighbors' kids are out. So
gotcha. Okay. And we'll talk about that one in a minute also.
Yeah.
So as far as correcting for the separation anxiety, so
Lego, come.
you can correct for separation anxiety, but not in the way a lot of people think. A lot of people think it's just, oh, the dog's displaying separation anxiety, correct them.
Right.
You could correct for the things the dog does when they're displaying separation anxiety, which helps to reduce the arousal associated with it, which then reduces the separation anxiety. What I mean by that is, let's say he's in the other room and you're away from him and he's in there just going nuts, right? He's pacing, he's barking, he's panting, he's jumping, this, that, right? We could isolate one of those behaviors and we could create an inhibition for those behaviors, which then brings them down a couple notches. You know, it brings them from like a 10 to a 7. Then we could pick another one and stop that and bring it from a 7 down to a 5, et cetera, right? So usually what I try to do is I pick whatever the most clear one is first. So I think you mentioned like he either paws at the door or jumps on the door. Is that correct?
Well, it's in the crate.
In the crate?
So,
Too.
oh yeah, that's true. He does do it.
When I'm in the bedroom
Yeah.
with him, he
Does
does
he? Yeah, I was going to say, I thought you mentioned that.
Yeah,
In the
sorry.
crate, will he paw at the crate door also?
He'll paw the crate. He tries to bite the crate.
Ah, okay. Okay. So same deal. Very, very clear thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick initially the boundaries, whether he's in the crate or whether he's in the bedroom with him. Any paws going on doors or mouth going on doors is what we're correcting first and foremost. So we're creating a strong inhibition for that thing first. And with some dogs, depending on the intensity of their separation anxiety, that may stop it, right? That may just get him to hit a point where he's like, all right, well, this isn't working. I should probably just not do that right now. And then they go try something else, like go lay down or take a nap or something like that, right? For other dogs, then, like I said, we need to pick something else. Maybe he'll stop doing those things altogether, but then just sit there and like bark, right? Again, if it's a very deliberate bark, that would be something else we could then correct for, but we got to just pick one to start with, and it's going to be the pawing and the chewing at it, right? The last thing, just because we saw it right there, I definitely want to see you guys start to get on any reactivity towards things either outside of the fence or outside of the house as well.
Okay, sure.
So you're going to correct for those things also, right? And it's going to feel like, at least for the first handful of days, the first 2 to 3 days, it's going to feel like they're correcting for a lot of things. That's very normal, right? Make sure you follow through and are consistent about giving those corrections for those things, because again, we're just setting all new boundaries right now. All of this is completely new, that we're going to be that consistent about stopping those things. And if we're consistent about correcting every time he does any of those things we discussed, you're going to see very rapidly that they start just falling off the list, and his behavior just starts becoming a little bit more mindful in the house. Now, another thing that you may see, I always tell everybody to make sure that they're not concerned about, is you may see that for the first day or two, excuse me, he's kind of a little apprehensive in the house, right? That's just him learning the new boundaries. As long as we don't cater to that and say, hey, it's okay, don't worry, this, that, he'll rebound from that very, very quickly as soon as he realizes what the boundary is. But that's a normal thing, that's a normal thing I kind of tell everybody as well, just to be aware of, because some people kind of real gun shy the first time they correct the dog, and the dog is like, what the hell was that? You know? So that's, obviously your biggest thing you need to start working on right off the rip is we need to start chipping away at these things on the list, right? We got to get those things under control. And like I said, in like 5 days or so, you should be able to see a really big reduction in a lot of these.
Okay, cool.
So then we get to getting them back together with each other. So you said since the fight, they haven't been together at all.
They haven't been outside, both outside of the crate at the same time. They've been in the same room, either one in the crate and one not, or them both in the.
But they haven't been like together, like without barriers between them.
No. So after the first fight, they were fine. Like
He kept them separate for a night and then put them back together, and they were fine.
Okay.
Second fight, partially because both of them were injured at that point in cones. We figured that was worse. And then Jess had called that trainer, and the trainer had said, keep them separate, evaluate.
Yep.
And that was last weekend, and then so we haven't
right. And we've also talked to I also talked to a behaviorist who's basically was like, why are you hand feeding them? That's silly. And you know,
like, are you gonna tell me what to do? Yeah.
Don't use an e-collar. But you can the safest thing is to rehome Lego, because they've already gotten in 2 fights. They might be getting more.
Sure.
Yeah, they have not been together since the.
Okay. Well, listen, so there's kind of 2 dynamics to this, because one is we want to get the dogs back together as quickly as we can, because the longer we keep them separate, the more they start to develop this like independence away from each other, right? So we definitely want to get them back together as quick as possible, but we definitely don't want to do it until we have a good solution for like how we're going to make sure we prevent it from happening again. So my recommendation for you guys would be, I would try to get them together for like an hour, right? Supervised, leashes on the dogs, just dragging in case you need to grab it and separate or something like that. And just get them together for like an hour where you just eyes glued to them, supervised. There's no resources or anything they could possibly fight over. And do that like once a day for the next week, right? And keep them separate the rest of the time. What that's going to do is just make sure that they're still getting used to being around each other. They don't realize like, hey, we're just away from each other forever. And then it still gives you the time outside of that 1 hour a day to chip away at these things with Legolas, so that we could then, when we go to fully put them back together, make sure Legolas is in a much, much better headspace where he's not going to be as pushy towards Gimli at that point. Right? So that's how I would handle that situation. Now, this is kind of the emergency precautionary, like if a dog fight breaks out kind of thing, as far as how to handle the situation. Because it sounds like, did they get pretty banged up from the last one?
Yeah, and
And-
Joe got bit in the process. I mean, like in the
Oh, I understand. Yeah.
they didn't go after Joe.
Wasn't-
It was
No, yeah, I get it.
There weren't any real lacerations. I just got some fingers crushed.
Yep. Okay. Gotcha. So when they were fighting with each other, like as far as their fighting style, was one of them like kind of latched onto the other, or
Yeah. They
each
latched
other.
onto each other.
convenient? Yeah. Okay. So here's the thing, right? So again, we don't want a fight to happen, but I always tell everybody like it's very important to understand the quickest and easiest way to break up a dog fight if it were to happen, right? So obviously there's so many different like mentalities as far as some people you'll read, they say pick them up by the back legs and it throws their balance off and causes them to let go. Others say pull them apart, correct them, spray them with water, any number of those things. Once dogs have latched onto each other, the quickest and safest way to break up a dog fight is essentially you're basically doing like a rear naked choke that causes them to open their mouth as opposed to pull them apart, right? Because where most of the damage and trauma happens in a dog fight is when you're pulling them apart and it's like ripping and then they're re-gripping and then your hand gets in the way and like all that kind of stuff, right? So do they both wear collars in the house typically? They do. Yes. Okay, perfect. So if they have collars on, the easiest way to do it is basically what you would do is you would straddle on top of one of them, grab by the collar with two hands, literally just pick straight up until their front legs come off the ground, hold for about 4 seconds, and they literally let go like that, right? It is like the fastest way that you could do it, right? And because it's so fast when you do that, it doesn't cause any sort of damage, right? You're not hurting them or anything like that. And like I said, it's not that we want dog fights to happen or anything like that, but I've been in positions where I've needed to break up pretty gnarly ones, and that has been the absolute easiest way to do so. And that's why I say like have them drag the leashes in the house for the first handful of times that they're together, because then you don't even have to worry about getting super close contact and grabbing the collar. You could just grab the leash and just hold up until the same process happens and they let go, and then you separate them, and then you're kind of good to go at that point. Again, you want to prevent that. We want to make sure that doesn't happen, but just in case it does, that will prevent a lot of injury and a lot of headache if you do run into
slip leads. Just because I feel like it's kind of the same
concept. A slip lead is actually going to work better. I mean, it's going to work better because it's essentially choking, right?
I was choking stuff on the slip lead without us doing anything anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So again, it's not that we want to be doing it or anything like that. If you run into that situation, that is going to be your easiest way to be able to handle it.
I mean, I think honestly, you've made me feel a lot better about this whole situation, because everything I was hearing was you need to your dog.
No, I've been there, done that. I mean, I actually have a couple of podcast episodes on this that I've done. But two of my dogs, I have 2 pitties and a couple other dogs also. But when they first met each other, got in a couple of bloodbath fights with each other, like really gnarly knockout, drag out. Everybody's getting bit, like not fun ones, right? So I've been in your position before. I understand how stressful it is, obviously, but both of them are downstairs right now together with each other unattended, perfectly fine, so like they can get past it. And I think a lot of trainers that say things like you have to rehome them once they start fighting, they're never going to stop fighting, this and that, they just haven't been in that position before and needed to really rehab them, right? Like getting rid of my dogs was not an option for me, you know what I mean? And we figured out solutions for it. And when you really break down why they're fighting and where these issues are coming from, it becomes very apparent that this is a solvable issue, right? So yeah, no, I'm pretty confident we can get you past this.